Shalom, shalom to everybody. We are back from our break. And we read chapter 26 through to 27:19 just before lunch. So I'll just discuss. We were looking at the dwelling place. So we've been through all the materials that were brought, and then we looked at what is inside the set-apart place and the most set-apart place with the showbread table, the menorah. Next week, we'll look at the golden slaughter place of incense. And then we spoke of the Ark of the Covenant. And now we're looking at the dwelling place. And as we look at the tabernacle and its design, and we see that how every detail was given in complete precision and accuracy. And as we run through some more key points through these two chapters that we just read just before lunch, and what we're discussing, we've already discussed all the materials. We can now begin to see some of the measurements that are given in the dwelling place. We were told that 10 fine woven linen curtains with cherubim embroidered on them. And 10, we know, is a number in Scripture that represents a full basket. There's 10 omers in a ephah basket. And it represents a quorum or a community. And we also know that with the 10 linen curtains, they had 100 loops, 50 on each end of set of 5 curtains. So we see 50 golden hooks with the 100 loops that would then come together. You see 50 is a number that's familiar with us too, in representing the Yovel, the Jubilee, the release, the year of release. And so it speaks of Shavuot or Pentecost, reminds us of that. And the Feast of Weeks, when the 10 words were given at Mount Sinai. We also understand at Shavuot, when the 120 believers were gathered, when the Spirit was poured out as the first fruit of the Spirit. And so there were 5 curtains either side that had to be attached, symbolizing, when we think of 5, it's almost like the 2 hands coming together and the fingers intertwining or interlocking and brought together, speaking again about unity and the work. Hands represent work. And so these curtains, we were told, had to be the work of a skilled workman. Shaul writes to Timotheus and he says to him, do your utmost to present yourself to Elohim as a workman approved, not being ashamed, and able to rightly distinguish, rightly handle the word of truth. And you can't do that if you don't practice the word. If you don't study the word and practice the word, you can never handle it correctly. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people today. They're not handling the word properly. And if we're not doing the Torah as well as hearing it, we can't be in unity. Because what is the dwelling place of Elohim to do with idols? Or what is the unbeliever to do with the believer? All that is when we begin to understand Shaul's wording, we begin to come back to the pattern. We come back to the design, who we are as a body. And in the body, there's a design, there's a pattern, there's a function. And you can't function with some dysfunctionality. It's not going to function. And when we see that, we realize that when we have this unity, everything functions. Yahweh's there. You got to think, when this tabernacle and its service was at its prime and everything was going well, it must have been quite a sight to see, even as you were encamped around it, and see these brilliant white curtains and see the smell and see the smoke of the offerings that were going up. And I mean, now that would be as you encamped around different tribes. What about the nations that were saying, what's going on over there? Must have been something. We want to know what's going on over there. And is that how we are today, causing people to say, hey, what's going on with you? Are we being that fragrance? Are we actually functioning in such a way that it should attract people's interest? While at the same time, those that are on the same walk, it's like we wear tzitzits because it's not like we're looking at our own garments all the time, but when we see it or we see somebody else's, it reminds us. So there's always this mirror toward each other, that we're keeping each other fanning into flame the good deposit. So we are encouraging one another. But if we see people slacking, we'll probably slack, because that tends to happen with a lot of people. They get influenced by the negative. And what we learn from this is, if we don't understand the design and we get almost drilled into us what the design, what the pattern and the function and how it gives us an ability to understand how it flowed, when we don't get that, there's a lot of things in Scripture we won't really get. because it will get, there will be something that's stuck, like I'm stucking now with my voice here, you know. And so without the Torah, we cannot form a place that's worthy of Yahweh's dwelling in our midst. The blue thread, as mentioned earlier, is to remind us of his commands. We see these fine linen curtains. We also understand they were blue, purple, and scarlet material. Make them with cherubim. That means cherubim are made on them. The cherubim didn't come down and help make the curtains. Okay, so the reason why on the curtains you would have these cherubim embroidered upon them is because it's again a picture of the pattern on the heavens when the cherubim are around the throne, continually worshipping with the gold. You've got the purple, the blue, the scarlet. It's all representative of the authority, the royalty, the brilliance, and the perfection of the set-apartness of Yahweh. Now, with the dwelling place, all the elements that are inside the dwelling place have been instructed on how to make. Now, everything we're looking at this week, this is the pattern. We're going to look next week as they start making it, and then we'll see again how it's all made according to that. So we're first looking at the blueprint at the moment, and what's required to make sure that this blueprint is actually brought about so that it can function. And that's, we think about that on our walk. We come to the master, we come to the door. We don't know how to do everything. We've still got to come and we've got to learn the blueprint, and we've got to apply that with the very tools that are put in our hands so that we can at the end look back and say, hey, but we are functioning the way we are required to. So the acacia boards that were to be made, we spoke about the shita wood and how it's joined together like a strong wood bound together in unity. They would be standing up, and it speaks again of our ability to be true watchmen that stand up and speak the truth. We're not backing down when we are asked to give a reason for the hope that we have, but we're always ready, taking our stand in a good fight of the belief, lifting the shield of belief, but we're also ready always to be a witness. Not saying, it's picturing if we're the dwelling place, it's if somebody wants to inquire something, oh no, first let me set up. No, we should always be ready. We're ready. We've been given the blueprint. We should be set up. We should be functioning. And it's about taking our stand in the master, and the two tenons that were to be in each board to bind them together. And again, it speaks of anybody that knows anything about woodwork, a tenon joint is one of the strongest joints that you get. So, they didn't have quick fix screwdrivers and things that we all like to use today, and screws and all those things, but making tenon joints to fit correctly so that it binds takes skill, And the word for tenons in Hebrew is yat, which is a word for hand. And every board, same measurement and requirement, showing us that as we stand firm in the master, there is one measurement, and that is set apartness. 40 being a unique number in Scripture. 40 years Israel wandered in the wilderness because they rebelled against Yahweh. And when they didn't, the 10 spies brought the negative report. We also understand Moshe went twice, 40 days and 40 nights in the mountain. Our Messiah was 40 days, 40 nights in the wilderness after he was immersed by Yochanan. Then after his resurrection, he spent another 40 days. So 40 is a wonderful picture in Hebrew of testing, refining, and enduring. And each side of the boards were to be joined by 5 bars that would bring support and structure, with the middle bar going right through the board. So you'd have 4 bars kind of on the sides that were joining them, and then one would go right through all of the boards. So there would be, so it helped it keep everything in balance and exactly in place. And when we look at this, we understand 5 as in representing, we talked about the curtains and the 5 curtains, and 5 curtains coming together as 10, which is the fingers, the hands, speaking what you do. We also understand Ephesians when Shaul tells us how our master has appointed some to equip the body to maturity. In other words, to bring about the proper function of the dwelling place, to bring it together, to work together in the perfection of set apartness. And that is, some have translated it as the 5-fold ministry, if you will, the emissaries, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. So you've got, again, a picture of the theme of the pattern of service of set apartness has not been done away with when our master came in the flesh. He's established what it now means in him as his body, but we can learn how to be that when we look at the pattern that was given as a reflection of that which is already in the heavens. So that's why it's so important for us to understand, so we can be built up. As Shaul says, that we are to be built up a spiritual house in 1 Peter 2 verse 5. And the Greek word for built up is oikodomio, which comes from oikos, which is a house. That's the Greek word for house, oikos. And doma, which means to build, as in build a house or a dwelling. So it's a house that's built. And so we are fellow workers of Elohim, and we are to be about building his house, which we are. In other words, we should be building one another up in the set-apart belief. We should be encouraging one another. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 9 says, we are fellow workers of Elohim. You are the field of Elohim, the building of Elohim. So in other words, we are to be working in each other's lives as we are joined together, strengthening one another, encouraging one another. And one of the things that we see when Shaul says you are a dwelling place, the you are in Greek is este, and it's a second person plural of emi, which means I exist, or I am, or I remain. So it's the you is plural. And the dwelling place, naos, is singular in the Greek text. So it's highlighting that we together are the one. And that's what our master prayed, that we would be one, because that's a picture of the dwelling place being actually done and completed according to his perfect design and pattern that he gave for us to be the means by which he would be in our midst. Now, Tehillah 127 verse 1 says, if Yahweh does not build the house, its builders have labored in vain. If Yahweh does not guard the city, the watchman has stayed awake in vain. And so we understand that we can only build his way. So yes, Yahweh is the master builder, but we are the laborers in a sense. He's the one that's put forth the plan. He's the one that equips us, and we must actually, and what I like when we look at Shlomo, we are told with Shlomo and Hiram and everybody that helped supply Shlomo for all the materials, you know, there wasn't a chisel or a hammer heard in the temple. It was made outside in the quarry and then brought in. And I like that because the whole purpose is, you know, the stuff had to be made to precision. So when it came in, it just went. There wasn't a quick fix chisel here, hammer there. And that's why when we come together in the master, there isn't supposed to be hammers and chisels. It's supposed to it's just supposed to function, you know. And it's by the Torah of Elohim that a house is built, and doing of these instructions brings understanding. It establishes our firm footing on the rock. And building contrary to the Torah is simply just hard work that will just get you nowhere, you know. And it will just bring confusion, just as Nimrod built Babel. It was just, they all thought they could do it on their own, and Yahweh confused it. Because if Yahweh's not giving the okay and the pattern and the approval, not going to work. And these instructions as regards to these materials speak about that which we will be built and will be proven by fire. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 11, Shaul says, for no one is able to lay any other foundation except that which is laid, which is Yeshua Messiah. He says, if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work shall be revealed, for the day shall show it up, because it is revealed by fire. And the fire shall prove the work of each one, what sort it is. If anyone's work remains, which he has built on, he shall receive a reward. If anyone's work, you might receive a award to rule over, yes, reward. If anyone's work is burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, but as through fire. Do you not know that you are a dwelling place of Elohim, and that the Spirit of Elohim dwells in you? If anyone destroys the dwelling place of Elohim, Elohim shall destroy him. For the dwelling place of Elohim is set apart, which you are. So I read a bit previous to you are the dwelling place of Elohim, because it's tying in with this Torah portion. You know, part of bringing all the materials and getting it ready for work, as we see the work of skilled workmen, a lot of it had to be refined, a lot of it had to go through the fire, a lot of it had to be joined together. It takes skill, and your work will be proved by the fire of the word. What will you have to show, as pictured by the parable of the talents? Are you going to be declared a trustworthy servant, or one that will have what you had or thought you had taken away from you and cast out because you hid your talents and decided, well, let everyone else do it and I'll just pitch up. So we consider that the materials that we used in the dwelling place, we recognize that by this design, that he's building us for one purpose, so that he can be with us. And that sin will have no way to cause his presence to depart again. You know, David sings a wonderful Psalm 84. He says, how lovely are your dwelling places, O Yahweh of hosts. My being is longed, even fainted for the courts of Yahweh. My heart and flesh cry out for the living El. And this is a song of praise for Yahweh and his wonderful dwelling place. And we touch on a couple of things here. Sorry, I did say it's David. I'm not sure if it was David. Maybe you can just check 84. It's thought by many that this was one of the psalms that was sung by those who came to Jerusalem for the Feast of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. And this wonderful melody that we are able to see here is the praise for the dwelling place, the lovely dwelling place of Yahweh. It's actually nothing in this world can compare to it, you know. And so we got to think how awesome, if we look at this and he's looking at the dwelling places of Yahweh and that he didn't want to be anywhere else. If you look in your eSword, we understand that how awesome is that if we are his dwelling place, that we are more desirable than anything else in this world in Yahweh's eyes, because we are the apple of his eye. And if we see what's being expressed here toward the dwelling place of Elohim and the desire to be there, expressed through this song of praise for Yahweh, I want to ask you, if you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you want to be? I think for most people, if asked that question, it wouldn't be in the dwelling place of Elohim. Now, the outline of the psalm opens with praise for Yahweh and those who live in his dwelling. Praise and blessing is expressed for the faithful sojourner who comes to the dwelling place of Yahweh. Following these blessings and praise, there's a prayer for the sovereign that's given. The desire to be anywhere else is greatly overshadowed and diminished by the awesome blessing of being in the dwelling place of Elohim. That's what Tehillah 84 expresses. Elohim is praised as being the only one true source of all joy, all strength, security, and the blessing upon those that trust in Elohim is greatly affirmed. So it's a powerful psalm to remind us who we are in the Master. And the word that's given for dwelling places is written as Mishkenothecha, which comes from, it's a plural of Mishkan, which we spoke of earlier, coming from Shachan, which is to dwell, abide, settle down. Now, Bamidbar 24 verse 5 says, how good are your tents, O Yaakov, your dwellings, O Israel. And when we look at that expression there, we see that the wonderful picture of the difference between tents and dwelling, as in the tent is sojourning with Yahweh, where we have his witness, and we have the powerful appointments as we go. We have the tent of appointment, so we see the Sabbath and feast, where the Mishkan represents the fullness of Yahweh being forever in the midst of the people, as a complete structure, a complete dwelling that he will abide in forever. And we have the appointments that are guiding us to be that dwelling place that will be inhabited forever. It's such a wonderful thing here. And so we understand that when we see how lovely are your dwelling places, Yedidoth is the word that's used here for lovely, coming from the word Yadid, which is beloved, well-beloved, loved. And the basic meaning of the noun Yadid is one that is greatly loved by Elohim or by man. In other words, you know, when we see that we are his dwelling place and how loved his dwelling place is, we can understand why our love for him with all our heart can be a reciprocal response for his love for us. Because he loved us so much that he died for us. And this deep expression of love for the dwelling place of Elohim tends to open up a mirror for us to ask, how strong is your love for the dwelling place of Elohim? In understanding how we long for a permanent dwelling to be in our midst, his permanent dwelling, we recognize how we are to experience the joy of his presence when we gather on his Sabbaths and feasts. So I ask you today, how much do you love the Sabbaths and the appointed times of Yahweh? Sometimes there are people that are sitting and an hour or two goes by and three, it's like, oh, I wish I was over there and I wish I was over there. But hold on, do you know whose dwelling you are in? Do you know what you're part of? If your heart loves his dwelling places, as this psalmist of Psalm 84 declares, then missing an appointed time would be out of the question. It wouldn't even be something to be considered. As love for his presence would cause you to make sure that his Sabbaths and feasts are never missed. So many people often find excuses to not be gathered where they should. They simply highlight that their love for Elohim is not as they might express with their lips and may claim to be. And so we realize what it means for us to have this love for the dwelling place of Yahweh, that this design of this chapter 26 is laying out for us. We look at all the courtyard and everything else, and within the dwelling place, we then come to realize that there is a responsibility on our part. And chapter 27 starts off with the design of the bronze slaughter place. You know, we prefer the word slaughter place as opposed to altar, as the Hebrew root word for altar can mean to slay or slaughter. Hence, we understand and prefer the term slaughter place, because it's the place where the blood of the slaughtered animals was brought as a presentation of the ability to draw near to Elohim. Altar can have varying meanings depending on where you are worshiping or what you are worshiping, because it can take corrupt forms of worship as opposed to recognizing the slaughtering of blood that gives access to his presence and the price that our master ultimately paid so that we can be a daily living slaughtering, offering up our lives, but not dying, because it's a living slaughtering. And so the bronze slaughter place, we understand here, it showed that Israel had, as a first step for sinful man to approach a set-apart Elohim, was only by the means of blood. And that we understand everything in the tabernacle, almost everything in the tabernacle, had to be cleansed by blood. We understand that the bronze slaughter place, being the place for burning animals or offerings, for a sin offering, a person had to bring an animal, a male one without blemish or defect from the flock or the herd. I'm doing a Kayla just now, getting mixed up words. Huh? And to the priest and the tabernacle gate, they come to the priest at the door of the tabernacle, at the gate of the tabernacle, and lay their hands on the offering. And the person that was identifying with the sacrifice, his sin and guilt would, in a sense, be moved to the animal that was being offered up on his behalf. The priest would then, the one bringing the offering would slaughter the animals. He has to be skilled in this procedure. Then the priest would take the blood and apply the blood on his behalf on the slaughter place, and take the parts of the animal and put them on the slaughter place. And whatever, depending on the offering, then certain things were whole burnt offerings and other things, there were parts that went to the priest. Blood was a significant agent of atonement. That is a covering for sin and the cleansing that we read about in the Tanakh, under the order of the Levitical priesthood, as a pattern on earth of that which is above, of the coming good matters that would come from above to fulfill once and for all that these patterns pointed toward. Hebrews 9 tells us, according to the Torah, almost all is cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness. Although this was done each year, the covering of their sins, Israel had to perform these duties every single year, because the blood of bulls and goats could never remove sin. They were simply a covering until the time would come when our master would bring his blood to not only cleanse, cover, but remove and cleanse our guilty conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim. The bronze slaughter place represents the offering that our master did with his own life. Yeshayahu 53 verse 7 says, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, but he did not open his mouth. Hebrews 9, I think we read chapter 9 in Hebrews last week, didn't we? Are we doing it this week? No, we did it last week. We're doing Hebrews 8 this week, I think. Okay, it says, for if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the defiled sets apart for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of the Messiah, who through the everlasting Spirit offered himself unblemished to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim. Horns that were on the bronze slaughter place was a symbol of strength and power. And when a sacrifice was made, blood was put on the horns of the slaughter place, signifying the power of the blood to cover or atone for one's sins. And so we understand that Yeshua, as David, who did write Tehillah 18, says, Yahweh is my rock and my stronghold and my deliverer. My El is my rock. I take refuge in him, my shield and the horn of my deliverance, my high tower. So here we understand also the horn on an animal, the Hebrew word keren for horn, also means to shine or to beautify. So we also understand that the horns of an animal is what gives the animal its strength, its identity, its beauty, its signification. So the horns on the slaughter place also represent the beauty of the work that the slaughtering does on behalf of the one offering the slaughtering. So we understand a wonderful picture of our Master and the strength that we have in him, who has now not only covered us, but cleansed us and removed sin from us. We see in the design of the bronze slaughter place, there was a grating or meshwork that would be like a sieve and would stop the bones or whatever was not burnt up from falling to the ground. So, because if you don't have a sieve in a fire, you can actually end up killing the fire. So as the ashes go down through the grid, etc., and it helps with the airflow and everything else, it keeps it burning. But there's a powerful picture in this design here, because it shows that the perfect work of the Master will not let anything that should not fall to the ground. Amos 9 verse 9 says, look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Israel among all the nations as one sifts with a sieve. Yet not a grain falls to the ground. The poles that were made to carry the slaughter place also represent for us the need to carry each other's burdens, as Shaul writes in Galatians, so we complete the Torah of Messiah. And then we come to we've worked basically from the dwelling place with the set-apart place and the most set-apart place and its coverings, and we've worked out and we've come to the slaughter place. Now we're looking at what were the boundaries, the fence and the gate. The gate of the outer courtyard as the single entrance into the tabernacle, it was a large multicolored curtain composed of finely twined linen, measuring 35 feet in length and 8.7 feet high. That's quite a big curtain, And the gate would have been notable for the color scheme consistent of being blue, purple, and scarlet material made with cherubim. And the white. No, the cherubim was on the dwelling place, not at the gate. So you got your blue, purple, and scarlet, and this white, brilliant white linen. And it was the only entrance. Whoever wanted to enter would be met by a priest when they were bringing their offering before the priest, after which the individual would have to slay their own animal, bringing the priest. Then the priest would handle the offering on the slaughter place. Now, this is a picture again of coming to Yeshua Messiah, laying down our own lives, acknowledging our sin and guilt, so that he can take that and handle it for us as our high priest and redeemer and cleanse us from all unrighteousness, for he is the door. And whoever enters through him will be saved. And we will be able to therefore go in and go out and find pasture. We see that in Yochanan 10 verse 9, where he declares that he is the door. The covering for the gate, made of fine linen, blue and purple and scarlet material, woven together, is a wonderful picture that highlights the perfection of an expression of a declaration of the royalty, the purity, the richness of who our Master and Savior is. The fence, if you weren't part of the nation of Israel in the wilderness and you were just wandering along in your own merry way, and you saw Israel, and you saw this whole nation, and you saw this tabernacle being set up around the wilderness, whatever terrain you'd be in, and you witnessed this camp of 2 million plus people. It was probably not like an a typical refugee camp that you might see in the world today, but a little bit more orderly in appearance. The tents belonging to the common man were probably dreary, brownish color, going in with the sand, blending in, everybody's tents. And in the center, you have this brilliant white wall of 100 feet, 100 feet long, 200 feet long, 100 feet wide, and 10 feet high. What an awesome sight that must have been, especially on a very sunny day, perhaps, and shining. How many of you have ever put washing up in the sun and it's bright white, and you come back in the house and you're like, I can't see anymore, The hot desert sun shining, or maybe not desert, but the wilderness sun shining against this white linen fence with these poles that also were on silver sockets, and the bronze pegs. Even the bronze shining in the sun. It would have certainly been noticeable in the center of a nation that might not have had such brilliant white tents, for instance. And so we understand that many people would have been looking on and saying, wow, look at this. And you got to think, when you look at this, it was absolutely impossible for the common man or any other stranger to see inside the tabernacle court from outside the camp. That white fence created a barrier. And it created a barrier between that which is outside and that which is totally set apart. And the representation of Yahweh's set apartness and his protection from anybody being destroyed for coming in any manner that was not worthy to be coming into his presence. So we see this wonderful thing here, that it was designed with one purpose in mind. This tent was designed to keep people out that shouldn't be in. And anything that was offensive to Yahweh would be kept out. And it was made of white linen, which we understand, Revelation says that the fine linen, which we understand from the perfection of the white representing cleansed or cleanliness, highlights the righteousness that we've been given to walk in. And without righteousness, we cannot come into his presence. We can't come in an unrighteous manner. We can't come in according to his outside of his pattern. We must come in according to his pattern. Yahweh is righteous, he's perfect, and he calls us to be perfect. And that's when our master says, therefore be perfect as your Father in the heavens is perfect. As in heaven, let it be done here on earth. That's exactly what, there's no different requirement in terms of set apartness. The difference is that we have the eternal blood of Messiah that gives us access to understand this pattern of how we can draw near. It doesn't relinquish our responsibility to guard our garments and make sure that we don't allow sin and lawlessness to come into our lives. Yeshayahu 64 verse 6 says, and all of us have become as one unclean, and all our righteousness are as soiled rags. And all of us fade like a leaf, and our crookednesses, like the wind, has taken us away. This is our sinful state, that we were found before his face. And without his cleansing, we could not be put into a position where we could be his dwelling place. And as we surrender and submit to the hearing of the word that teaches us righteousness, we can be equipped to enter in. And that's why Shaul writes to Timotheus, all scripture is breathed by Elohim, and it's there and it's profitable for teaching, reproof, setting straight, and instruction in righteousness. Why? So that you can be fit, equipped to enter into the master's presence. Not just enter in, but actually be his dwelling place as a living stone being built up in the master. Yochanan Aleph says, if you know that he is righteous, you know that everyone doing righteousness has been born of him. In other words, if somebody says they're born again, as a term, but they don't guard the Sabbaths and feasts and don't use his name and don't eat what should be eaten and eat what they shouldn't be eating, then they haven't been born of him, because you're not doing righteousness as he is righteous. Little children, let no one lead you astray. The one doing righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. I mean, Yochanan Aleph, I don't understand how people are reading that today sometimes, because it tells us sin is lawlessness and all unrighteousness is sin. And Therefore, we understand that anybody who claims to be in Messiah and is not walking according to his Torah is a liar. And the truth isn't in them. They can't be part of the dwelling place. They'll be like that one I mentioned earlier with the parable of the wedding banquet that didn't have the right garments on, didn't have the right businos on, or levush, remember the word for garments? Another aspect we can see of this fence is a picture of how walking in his Torah keeps us protected from that which is outside, as his word says that he has set our boundaries in pleasant places. And when we think how pleasant, how lovely are your dwelling places, O Yahweh. Bronze being a picture of judgment, we see the sockets of bronze that held up the columns for the linen would also reveal any punishment upon those that would rebel against him. It's 1 John 3 verse 4 that says everyone doing sin also does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. The height of the curtains that formed the fence shows us the enclosure from the set apart place, or the tabernacle would be set apart from outside. Maybe if you're on a hill, you could see down and see, but if you're there in, say, a ground level, a 10-foot high fence of curtain of linen, you're not gonna be able to see what's going on, And it all comes down to the heart behind all of this design. We're looking today at Torah portion teruma, and all those whose hearts had moved them, they were to bring the teruma, they were to give their contribution from the heart. And as I said earlier and repeat, when your heart is moved, then walking according to his instructions is actually a joy. And it's a delight. It's not heavy, it's the place you want to be. When I asked earlier, where would you rather be if you could be anywhere in the world right now? Where would you rather be? Rather. When we study the tabernacle like this, we could even go further into this, and I encourage you to do so. You can see that there is actually no other way to live but his Torah. Reading these things, it should be encouraging to us, reminding us who we are. Amidst a world that's got a lot of chaos going on, there's a lot of lawlessness that's increasing, the days are getting darker. For many, there's no hope. But in us, when we read this design, hope should be kind of ignited again, or it should be the fanning into flame, that expectation, that hope, that joy. You can't have a hope in the master and be panicking, because then that hope fails. But the true hope never fails, because it's consistently desiring and seeking to have the perfection of the dwelling of our master in our midst, which means I must be willing to give from my heart what's required of me. As you look into the mirror of the word and you look at this portion called teruma, how does your life reflect against the very clear pattern of hearts that were moved, not removed, moved to submit, serve, build, and contribute? 2 Corinthians 8 verse 12 says, if the readiness is present, it is well received according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. You can't give what you don't have. But if you have and the readiness is there, then, that's the heart behind the matter. 1 Peter 4 verse 10 says, as each one has received a gift, serve one another as good trustees of the manifold favor of Elohim. 1 Chronicles 29 verse 3, and also because I delighted in the house of my Elohim. This is David, again declaring the love he had for the dwelling of Yahweh in his midst. I have treasure of gold and silver. I give for the house of my Elohim even more than that all that I have prepared for the set apart house. And when he says I have delighted, that Hebrew word for delighted is ratzah, which means to be pleased with, to accept favorably, to delight in, to approve of. And these are words that David spoke to the assembly when he was speaking about the great work that lay ahead for his son Shlomo to build the temple of Yahweh, and how it delighted him to give in abundance for this work that lay ahead. David declared, delighting in the house of Elohim, he also could delight in the wisdom of Elohim that he sought after through the proper meditating on his Torah day and night, and learning how to walk pleasing before the master as our reasonable worship, which is set apartness. And when the Torah is somebody's delight, then doing what the word commands is actually a pleasure. It's a ratzah. You delight in doing it. The Greek word that's used for delighted in 1 Chronicles 29 in recording David's word is sunodomai. Sunodomai means to delight, to rejoice in together, to rejoice in or feel satisfaction concerning. And why I'm mentioning this word is because Shaul uses this word in Romans 7 verse 22. For I delight in the Torah of Elohim according to the inward man. It's all about the heart. Our ability to delight in the Torah equips us when it comes from within, the inner man, recognizing what he's done for our lives. If it becomes an outward expression of command upon command that I have to follow or else, which we do have to follow because it's inside us, but if it comes from a place of, I actually want to do this, then it becomes something that's not really hard to pursue. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It takes a lot of work. It takes work to be skilled in it. It takes a lot of time, but it's not burdensome, you know. Those who find no satisfaction in studying, meditating, and learning the word in order to joyfully do it, and in other words, they find it hard and boring, render themselves as fools who do not have oil, and therefore cannot shine the light, and they will be shut out from entering into the reign of our Elohim. When we delight in the truth and we take pleasure in it, and it becomes our delight in guarding the Sabbaths and feasts of Elohim, then our ability to be cheerful givers is just an overflow, you know. When we do these things and it becomes a burden to do so, then the Torah clearly is not one's delight, and the fear of Elohim is most of the time not present. So when we consider this Torah portion, teruma, that we've looked at today, I hope that we are again refreshed in our understanding, inspired and encouraged to do our utmost to bring our best before the Master. A worthy contribution of our lives, being a daily living offering unto him, because this is our reasonable worship, done so with joy and gladness of heart. Anybody want to ask any questions or share anything about the materials that are brought, the elements of the tabernacle that are being given as a clear pattern of what needed to be built? Is it a song of Asaph? It will tell us in the. Doesn't say it in the. Okay, it's a wonderful praise for Yahweh's dwelling place, and that's one thing that we want to echo that same heart.
Well, I mean, the song says, "I've chosen rather to be a doorkeeper."
Yeah.
So this was one of the doorkeepers.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I was trying to see, who was all doorkeepers.
Well, Obed Edom became a doorkeeper.
Yeah. But, I mean, there was, you go into Chronicles, there's who did what.
Yes.
Asaph, the
He was one of the recorders, but Obed Edom was a doorkeeper.
Yeah. It's just interesting, it's for the sons of Korach. So
Yes.
Yeah. I never saw it like this, but it says exactly in 15 who plays the cymbals, who plays the lyres, who sings.
There's a pattern.
Blows the trumpet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just anyone does whatever.
No, it's according to.
Even in the songs.
Yes.
This must be sung with that specific voice. That Alamos's must have female voice.
Elohim is an Elohim of order and precision. And if we desire to know that order and precision, it takes time and effort to actually spend time, as we are required to, in learning the pattern, not just for the sake of knowledge, which we gain, but let the understanding of that knowledge be attained through the proper doing of the word. Because then it becomes something I actually want to do more and more and more, you know? And thinking of this desire of more, it strikes me now why we're also reading Matityahu shortly. We're going to look at Melaख़im Aleph first. But the parables that our master gives is really parables of the kingdom and about people whose hearts are actually driven for kingdom purposes, driven for the desire to actually have the reign of Elohim in one's heart as the reason for living. And so teruma, the call for contribution, is still a call that's being made today. We might not have it, well, we don't have a physical tabernacle that we go and take animals to, but we do have an order in the Master where his name is put, where he calls those to be gathered together, and he's appointed some to equip the body, and the rest of the body. Firstly, as we said, tithes is a non-negotiable. But all those whose hearts are moved to further the building process, be moved and give. It's, don't be sidetracked about the corruption of, just give, all you hear is give. It's Yahweh, he doesn't need what you have to give, but he wants to see, is your heart there to take that which he's put into your life? There's something that you're willing to actually give toward him. That's when things will begin to be built Yahweh's way, and it will have precise functionality that brings about the lovely dwelling place of Elohim, which we are. So it is a call for hearts to be checked. Is my heart in it or not? That's what, when we go through teruma, is my heart being lifted up to Yahweh, or is it being lifted up to self? That's something that we constantly have to be thinking about, Okay, so let's jump into Melakim Aleph 5, verse 12 to, who's reading? Is it? Just point it towards you there. 5 verse 12 to 6 verse 13. Yes.
And Yahweh gave Shlomo wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Shlomo, and the two of them made a covenant. And sovereign Shlomo raised up a compulsory labor out of all Israel, and the compulsory labor was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 per new moon by courses. They were 1 new moon in Lebanon, 2 new moons at home. And Adoniram was over the compulsory labor. And Shlomo had 70,000 bearing burdens, and 80,000 hewing stone in the mountains, besides 3,300 from the chiefs of Shlomo's deputies, who were over the work, those ruling over the people who labored in the work. And the sovereign commanded, and they brought large stones, precious stones, to lay the foundation of their house with hewn stones. And Shlomo's builders, and Hiram's builders, and the men of Gaval did hew, and prepared timber and stones to build the house. And it came to be in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, in the 4th year of the reign of Shlomo over Israel, in the new moon of Ziv, which is the 2nd new moon, that he began to build the house of Yahweh. And the house which sovereign Shlomo built for Yahweh was 60 cubits long and 20 wide and 30 cubits high. And the porch at the front of the hechal of the house was 20 cubits long, according to the breadth of the house, and its width 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with narrowed frames. And against the wall of the house he built rooms all around, against the wall of the house, all around the hechal and the speaking place. Thus he made side rooms all around. The lowest side room was 5 cubits wide, and the middle one was 6 cubits wide, and the third one was 7 cubits wide. For he made narrow ledges around the outside of the house, so as not to lay hold on the walls of the house. And the house, when it was being built, was built with finished stone made ready beforehand, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the house while it was being built. The doorway for the middle side room was on the right side of the house, and they went up the stairs to the middle side rooms, and from the middle to the third. So he built the house and completed it. And he panelled the house with beams and boards of cedar. And he built the side rooms of the structure against all the house, each 5 cubits high, and they were fastened to the house with cedar beams. And the word of Yahweh came to Shlomo, saying, This house which you are building, if you walk in my laws and do my right rulings, and shall guard all my commands and walk in them, then I shall confirm my word with you, which I spoke to your father David, and shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and not forsake my people Israel.
Okay, so we're looking here at some of the things that Shlomo began to do after everything was prepared. And Hiram was one who was used to provide a lot of materials from Lebanon. And a lot of the builders that were appointed, you had basically 153,300 men overseeing the work. There's a wonderful parable again of the workers that the master calls and becomes that which builds his house his way. And when we see here, they prepared everything according to the pattern. Everything had to be done in precision. And it was in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim. Now we know they were in Mitzrayim for 430 years to the day. And so an extra 50 years is a picture again of the release. So here you've got this, that it's almost like, okay, another 430 years since they came out of Mitzrayim, but then a 50 year representing the release or the Yovel, a return, is when the building started, And the house which he built, it was a magnificent house, 60 cubits long. It's about 26.7 meters long, about 8.9 meters high, 13.35 meters, probably 8 meters high and 13.35 meters wide. So it was a big, big house. And then we get a description of the porch, which later on became known as Shlomo's porch. Okay, and the porch of the house is where the Torah, the seat of Moshe, would be put, and whoever was reading from the Torah would read from the seat of Moshe from Shlomo's porch. And the porch was 20 by 10 cubits. Now, this is where the Torah of Yahweh would be proclaimed, from the house of Yahweh. An important part in the place for people that are hearing the word to receive the instructions on how to live in Yahweh's presence so that his presence does not leave, so that he dwells among his people. And so when it was being built, as I said earlier, built with finished stone, no hammer, no chisel, iron tool. Again, so powerful, when we think of we're being made into his dwelling place right now. And when he comes to take us to be with him forever, we'll be together. There's no further work that will be required. And in him bringing everything together in perfection, it's not done according to man's ways. It's his perfect building us as his bride. Now, just wanted to highlight Zechariah 5. Just want to get to Zechariah. Where are you? In Zechariah 5, one of the visions that he was given, he looked up and he saw a flying scroll. And Yahweh said to him, "What do you see?" And Zechariah answered, "I see a flying scroll, 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide." Now, these are the only two times in Scripture we get this measurement. So there's a clear reference in the vision of Zechariah that this represents what should have been Shlomo's porch, where the Torah and instructions for righteousness is being given. But in the days of Zechariah, he was being shown the depravity of a backsliding nation that's not serving Yahweh according to the instructions that should be given from the temple on how to live. And here in this vision, he sees this flying scroll. Now, the scroll represents something that should be declared, that people should be listening to, because what's on it? And he said to me, "This is the curse that goes over the face of all the earth." Now, the Torah is not a worthless word to us. It's our life. It's a blessing. So from Shlomo's porch, in type in this vision, what's going forth from there is not the truth. Listen what's happening. He says, everyone, this is now what's on the scroll. On one side, everyone who is stealing shall go unpunished. And everyone who's sworn falsely shall go unpunished, written on the other side. So, for most people today, hearing these things, they see this as good news. Oh, yeah, well, we've been saved. Once saved, always saved. Looking at today's terminology. We're not under the Torah anymore, so it doesn't matter. We can do what we want. It's, look, here's the good news. It's all taken away. That's what people are, in a sense, presenting as the flying scroll of Zechariah. Yahweh says, "I send it out," declares Yahweh of hosts. Now, when you ever see Yahweh declaring Yahweh of hosts. He's coming from a position of, I'm sending judgment, because the commander of the heavenly host has spoken, and there's no word that can come against him. And so he shall come, this flying scroll will come from Yahweh into the house of the thief, that says, if you stole, you'll be unpunished. But this scroll will come into the house of the thief, in other words, the one who stole, and the house of the one who shall swear falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it, both its timbers and stones. In other words, you won't be unpunished for stealing and swearing falsely. That blessing that you see on your life was actually going to be a curse to your destruction, but it's going to remain in your house until there's nothing left. So it will be a decay again, which is again a picture of the first Adam. In the day you sin, you will die. A decaying, which means there's no life any longer. And then he's given another vision of the ephah measure, and he goes on to, there's a few visions that Zechariah gets, which highlights valuable lessons for us. And the reason I'm mentioning that vision in terms of what Shlomo had built, we see today that many people are not going back to the pattern of obedience of the word. They are listening to flying scrolls of falsehood that is actually sent by Yahweh, because the good and the evil is from Yahweh. And here, Yahweh hands people over to the delusion, being they don't receive a love for the truth, and they're handed over it to believe the lie, but that lie is going to lead them to death. They're going to get destroyed. So when we look at the design of Yahweh's temple that's being built by Shlomo, we realize that we as his dwelling place have words to live by, and that is his instructions. And when we take on any deviation from Yahweh's word, we have no covering protection from the curse that is going to be poured out on the sons of disobedience. And one of the things I like to tie up, I know some people don't like all the maths that I do sometimes, but I tie in a nice kind of picture here. We see that with Yahweh, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day in your eyes. And so we also see one as 1,000. If you count in thousands and you get your ones, okay. Now we see there was 70,000 and 80,000. There was another 3,300. So I see that collectively in terms of the thousands. You know, whenever you do fractions in maths, you round up or you round down. So in type, there's 153,300. Now we bring that to another number that's quite significant in Scripture for us from my aspect of Yeshua declaring his body being built up his way. After his resurrection, when he was standing on the shore and they were trying to catch some fish and they were struggling all night, and he said to them, throw it on the other side. Oh, we've been going all over. Okay, but we'll listen to you. We'll be obedient. And they got such a big catch. The net didn't break, but they brought in 153 fish. And so we see a powerful picture here. And this is where our master also declares that I will make you fishers of men, because we are to be about building the body. And we can only do it when we're walking according to the Torah, the perfection of his pattern that gives us access. And even as the disciples, when they said, okay, I know we've been trying our own methods, but we'll listen to you. And when they listened to the master and went the other side, they got in a catch that they really had to ask other boats to help them get it in. And what we're taking note of here is we are in the process of still being built as a dwelling place of the Most High. The pattern for being built has not changed. The order and precision by which we are to obey his commands has not changed. The functionality of the application of blood has changed, and that's the change in the priesthood. Not that it's changed from the beginning, but the pattern of the priesthood in the earthly tabernacle was given for a time as a reflection of that which is in the heavens, as a shadow picture of the coming good matters that was declared from the beginning of creation. And therefore, we read in the book of Hebrews that Yahweh finding fault with them, not with the covenant, but with the Levitical priesthood administering the covenant, that he says, I'll make a renewed covenant by his own blood, where he shall write his laws upon our hearts, and he will establish it. So we have a pattern to live by, and without understanding this service, this tabernacle, the materials, the teruma, the contribution, the hearts behind it. If we don't grasp that, we can never fully grasp what it means to be the body of Yeshua Messiah. You know? And as this section in Kings or Melaख़im Aleph that we've read here to verse 13, verse 12 and 13 is very clear. It's conditional. If you walk in my laws and do my right rulings and guard my commands, then I shall confirm my word with you and will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel and not forsake my people Israel. So when we hear the words, I will never leave you nor forsake you, it's also covenant conditional promises. Because Yahweh did forsake his people when the esteem of Yahweh departed, when they rebelled against him, as I mentioned earlier, in regards to the days of Eli. So we too, as being built up in living stones, have a responsibility to walk in his laws, to do right rulings and guard all his commands. Then we have the assurance that he's in our midst. And we can cling to him, stay in him, and he will stay in us. Any thoughts on Shlomo's buildings or building? David's provision? Yahweh's promise? Are you reading something else in Chronicles there?
It's just the same thing.
Okay, anything you pick
but
up?
the numbers are all different.
Yeah.
And he says from the strangers, so it's not,
No.
you won't make compulsory labor Israel.
No. Okay, so let's go to Matit Yahu. What's it? Matit Yahu? 5, hey? No? Yes. 13, sorry. It says 1 to, well, it's to 53, but there's 58. So as a bonus, will you read to the end? We're just talking about delighting in the word and Shabbat. There we go. That's the answer we want to hear. Okay. If you get a parched throat, we can do relay here and we'll all read it together. Yeah.
And on that day Yahshua went out of the house and sat by the sea, and large crowds were gathered together to him, so that he went into a boat and sat down. And all the crowd stood on the beach, and he spoke to them much in parables, saying, See, the sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some indeed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. And others fell on rocky places, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, because they had no depth of soil. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered. And others fell among thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them. And others fell on good soil, and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And the taught ones came and said to him, Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answering said to them, Because it has been given to you to know the secrets of the reign of the heavens, but to them it has not been given. For whoever possesses, to him more shall be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But whoever does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away from him. Because of this I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Yeshayahu is completely filled, which says, Hearing ye shall hear, and by no means understand, and seeing ye shall see, and by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become thickened, and their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn back, and I heal them. And blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I say to you, that many prophets and righteous ones longed to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it. You then, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the reign, and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is that sown by the wayside. And that sown in rocky places, this is he who hears the word, and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but is short-lived. And when pressure of persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. And that sown among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the worry of this age and the deceit of riches choke the word, and it becomes fruitless. And that sown in the good soil is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Another parable he put before them, saying, The reign of the heavens has become like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed darnel among the wheat and went away. And when the blade sprouted and bore fruit, then the darnel also appeared. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? From where then does it have the darnel? And he said to them, A man, an enemy, did this. And the servants said to him, Do you wish then that we go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest while you gather up the darnel, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at the time of harvest I shall say to the reapers, First gather the darnel, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my granary. Another parable he put before them, saying, The rain of the heavens is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is less than all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is greater than the plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the heavens come and dwell in its branches. Another parable he spoke to them. The rain of the heavens is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened. Yahshua said all this to the crowds in parables, and he did not speak to them without a parable, so that what was spoken by the prophet might be fulfilled, saying, I shall open my mouth in parables, I shall pour forth what has been hidden from the foundation of the world. Then, having sent the crowds away, Yahshua went into the house, and his taught ones came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the darnel of the field. And he answering said to them, He who is sowing the good seed is the son of Adam, and the field is the world. And the good seed, these are the sons of the rain, but the darnel are the sons of the wicked one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. And the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the messengers. As the darnel then is gathered and burned in the fire, so it shall be at the end of this age. The son of Adam shall send out his messengers, and they shall gather out of his reign all the stumbling blocks and those doing lawlessness, and shall throw them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous shall shine forth as the sun in the reign of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Again, the reign of the heavens is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man having found it, hid, and for joy over it he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the reign of the heavens is like a man, a merchant, seeking fine pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the reign of the heavens is like a dragnet that was thrown into the sea and gathered some of every kind, which when it was filled they drew to shore. And they sat down and gathered the good into containers, but threw the rotten away. Thus it shall be at the end of the age, the messenger shall come forth and separate the wicked out of the midst of the righteous, and shall throw them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Yahshua said to them, Have you understood all this? They said to him, Yes, Master. And he said to them, Therefore every scholar taught in the reign of the heavens is like a householder who brings out of his treasure matters renewed and old. And it came to be, when Yahshua had ended these parables, that he left there. And when he had come to his own country, he taught them in their congregation, so that they were astonished and said, Where did this one get this wisdom and miracles? Is this not the son of the carpenter? Is not his mother called Miriam? And his brothers Yaakov and Yosef and Shimon and Yehuda? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did this one get all this? And they stumbled at him. But Yahushua said to them, A prophet is not unappreciated except in his own country and in his own house. And he did not do many miracles there because of their unbelief.
Okay, a whole lot of information in one chapter, lots of parables. But I just like, it's very clear here that we know that Yeshua only spoke to the crowds in parables. And I think that's a stumbling block for a lot of people today that misunderstand a lot. I mean, he even asked his taught ones, do you understand? When they said, please explain. And, you know, he even said in one of the other Besoras that if they don't even understand the parable of the sower, then how will they understand anything else? Because it is about his word. And what heart condition is the word falling upon? Because this is how you begin to know people. I mean, there's some people, they'll hear the word and they don't understand anything, so it just gets snatched away and it's as if they never heard it. Then you get other people that they receive it with joy. And it's like, oh, that's very nice. But then when it actually requires something of them and a bit of persecution comes, whatever, then it's quickly, taken away. It's quickly choked out. Or not choked out. The heat of actually doing what the word says causes them to say, no, I got no depth in this. No, this is too much. No, you guys carry on. or those that it's like thorns. You know, it's there for a while and it's like it's growing, but suddenly the thorns come up and it's like now it's choking out because it's a wrestle between Yahweh and Mammon. Yet you have hearts that are likened to good soil, where when the seed falls on it, the word of Elohim, it yields abundant fruit, you know. And so he was making it clear to them, saying, if you possess, you know, much is going to be required of you. But whoever possesses, more shall be given, and he shall have overflowing. But he who does not possess, even what he thinks he possesses, will be taken away. And that's why he speaks in parables, because it's a sifting process. Who really has ears? When he asks the 7 assemblies in Chazon, he who has an ear, let him hear. It's like everybody physically has ears, but it's who's actually paying attention, who's being watchful and alert and doing the word. Because it's rightly prophesied that there are many people hearing but not hearing, seeing but not perceiving. And he told his taught ones, your eyes are blessed because they see, and your ears because they hear. Just stop for a moment and think. Every Shabbat, we sit here and we have the blessing of the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. I spoke earlier about the hidden manna, the revelation of who he is, the bread from heaven. Do you stop and consider how blessed it is, not in an arrogant way at all, but how blessed it is to have our ears and eyes open? You know? There were a lot of righteous ones that longed to see what these guys saw and what we see today unfolding, because they prophesied about these end days, and we're living in it. And therefore, I say to true believers, some who claim to be true believers today are walking around as if they're conspiracy theorists. They are conspiracy theorists. They're not believers, because they're holding on to what if this and what if that, and say, hold on, what's the soil of your heart? What worries are choking out the truth of the blessing of eyes and ears that have been opened? Then you'll get some that will say, oh no, your eyes haven't been opened to see all this, and they're putting a deadline date on this and that and everything else, and try and be better than the prophets that have been in Scripture. Instead of simply living a set-apart life, yes, the times are getting darker, but that should inspire in us an expectation and a hope to endure under persecution, under pressure, under trials, knowing that our Master will not leave us nor forsake us. We spoke. What's the guarantee that he won't forsake us? When we guard his commands and walk in his laws and do his regulations. And so we must make sure the soil of our heart is in right standing, keeping the weeds out. And then another parable is about when men slept. Now, the idea of not sleeping, or sleeping, is not keeping watch. Shaul writes in Romans, the night is far advanced, the day is drawing near. Wake up, you who slumber. Wake up, you know, and it's a call to be alert. Yes, our Master gave us the clear witnesses of the times that would come before his appearing. And he says, when you see these things happening, lift up your eyes because the day draws near. Lifting up your eyes is making sure you're focused on him and his word, because there's a lot that can distract you. Because when your eyes aren't lifted, they are everywhere else, and looking to this one's theory and that one's theory instead of looking to the blessed hope and expectation of our deliverance. And here we see the reality of this parable. Wheat and darnel are going to grow up together. And it's only at the end that you're going to see the difference, actually. I mean, we know people by their fruit, so we can have, but we can't see hearts. And it will be a clear separation when our Master sends his messengers to grab the darnel out. There's the rapture theory, if you want it. The darnel are going to be plucked out. The wrong are going to be plucked out for judgment. And the righteous will dwell in the earth. But he said, let them both grow together. So we're in a scattered state, growing up amidst darnel. Darnel mimics wheat in terms of it looks like wheat, but when it comes to it getting full in the head, ripe in the head, the darnel doesn't. It continually stands upright where the wheat begins to bow. It's a picture of pride versus humility. And those who are lifting themselves up, Yahweh is going to bring down. And those who are bowed down, he will exalt and lift up. And so he also gives the rain of the heavens, and he likens the mustard seed. And again, it's about a belief. If you have a belief as a mustard seed, one of the smallest seeds, but when that seed sprouts and it gets a tree, it's enough for the birds of the heavens. I mean, he's using this idea of, sometimes you think, oh, I don't have much belief. But just have that belief that you have and make sure that you are nurturing that belief, which is obedience. And stir up works of obedience in each other. Then another parable of the woman. We've spoken about the woman who took 3 measures of flour as likened to the 3 appointed times where we know we get rid of the leaven with understanding matzot. But then from the waving of the sheaf of the first to Shavuot, the 50 days is a picture again of being taken unto a loaf that has good leaven in it to be waved as an acceptable offering at Shavuot, as a representation of a bride that's ready. And it's the kingdom leaven from above, which is the good leaven that needs to be worked in us once the rotten leaven has been cast out of us and washed out of us through the blood of Messiah. And the 3 times a year, or 3 measures, is a picture again of the 3 times a year, which encompasses the 7 feasts of Yahweh. And then he just spoke in parables. And he uses another one in terms of, he explains the parable of the wheat and the darnel. And then he says the rain of the heavens is like a man who is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it for joy over it, he sells everything that he has and he purchases that field. And then the rain of the heavens is like a man, a merchant seeking pearls. When he found one pearl of great price, he sold everything he had to buy that pearl. Now, these are all pictures of being established in the ways of our master and finding entrance into the rain. When we're given a description of the New Jerusalem that Yochanan saw in the book of Revelation, and the 12 gates that have the name of the tribes of Israel upon, I believe the names are on all gates. It's about a unity of a body that's established in covenant, and each gate was one giant pearl. Because these parables are about the reign of the heavens and what are we actually finding? Because as it is in the heaven, let it be done here on earth. Also the dragnet that gathered some of every kind, and they threw... They sat down and gathered the good into containers, but threw the rotten away. Again, there's an ingathering that's coming, but there's a separation that's coming between the set apart and the profane, between the clean and the unclean. And that's what will happen at the end of the age. And the messengers will come out and they will gather the wicked out of the midst of the righteous. And there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth when the unrighteous are headed for the lake of fire. And so therefore he says, every scholar taught in the reign of the heavens. Here's a short chapter giving parable lessons on the reign of the heavens. It's not limited to this chapter, but he gives parables to the crowds that wouldn't understand what's going on, but to his taught ones. Light is for those in the house. It's made known to them. Therefore, we understand when we are taught in the reign of the heavens, which is every week we get taught what Moshe gave as instruction, because it represents the reign of the heavens through the pattern which is done here on earth as a reflection of our Father in the heavens, who we are sons and daughters of. And when we are doing that, they bring out, the one who's taught in the reign of the heavens brings out treasured matters, renewed and old. And I like that passage because it's a parable for us. Because many just want to see, let's use it in today's terms. They just don't want, they want the renewed, what they determine as the renewed, they don't want the old. So we need to look at the old pattern and the refreshing of the new pattern. We bring those out together and we see the treasure that's hidden in this. And a lot of them were astonished when they heard all these parables. I mean, the taught ones, obviously, like getting insight and getting taught in the reign of the heavens and getting equipped. But many were looking around saying, this guy, where does he get all this stuff from? We know his family. Here's his brothers and sisters here. I mean, where did this guy come from? And there's a clear fact. Yeshua basically said a prophet is not unappreciated. We often want to read the prophet's not appreciated in his own town, but a prophet is not unappreciated, which means he is appreciated, but he's not appreciated in his own house. And the sad ending of this chapter, he didn't do many miracles there because of their unbelief. Any thoughts on this passage? Before we carry on, got a short little bit to go, but it's just a nice chapter which highlights our need to be taught as a true scholar in the reign of the heavens, which we cannot be if we are not learning from Bereshit to Chazon, Genesis to Revelation. Okay, let's go to Hebrews 8. Hebrews 8. Verse 1 to 13. Who's reading?
Now the summary of what we are saying is, we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves in the set-apart place and of the true tent, which Yahweh set up and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and slaughters, so it was also necessary for this one to have somewhat to offer. For if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the Torah, who serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly, as Moshe was warned when he was about to make the tent. For he said, "See that you make all according to the pattern shown you on the mountain." But now he has obtained a more excellent service, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. For finding fault with them, he says, "See, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah a renewed covenant, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I disregarded them, says Yahweh. Because this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh, giving my laws in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, because they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. Because I shall forgive their unrighteousness, and their sins and their lawlessnesses I shall no longer remember. By saying renewed, he has made the first old. Now what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing.
Okay, so this section that we're reading here, this chapter is saying it all. This is the summary of what we're saying. We've got a high priest. This is what it's about. We're looking at the teruma that was to be brought so that the tabernacle and its furnishings could be set up, so Yahweh's presence is there. These were always according to the exact pattern, and the pattern is ultimately directed toward the high priest that we have as a summary of all these matters. And it's very clear that this is the true tent that we are in Messiah, as opposed to, look, it was a tent. It was a true tent that Moshe built. It wasn't an imaginary one, okay? But it's not the actual dwelling of the master in its fullness that requires a continual service of blood of bulls and goats to be offered as a pattern. And so here he says every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and slaughters, and if he was on earth, he wouldn't be a priest because there is. And at this point in the time of writing this letter to the Hebrews in the dispersion, the temple was still in service. Be it corrupt or not, it was still in service till around 70 AD when it was destroyed and burned with fire, or 70 of the Common Era. Okay? And so we see here that when he was writing this, he was saying, okay, there are priests right now, but if he was on earth, if the master was here, he wouldn't, because there is one in the tabernacle.
He's from Yehudah.
But he is from Yehudah, yes. And he wouldn't have been a priest because that was from the Levitical line. Because there are priests appointed to that pattern of the Levites that were chosen in the place of the firstborn. And this was serving as a shadow of the heavenly, because we read what we read today. Because Moshe was warned. I like what he's saying here. You know, it wasn't like, oh, here's the pattern, carry on. How many people, listen, how many of you have got diagrams that you want to try and fix something together? Most of the time it comes from China, you don't, so you make your own way. Yahweh's not like that. He's got a pattern and he warns you, if you don't follow this pattern, because we can put our trust in his pattern. Okay? And so Make it according to the pattern you were shown on the mountain. And a picture of on the mountain is a representation of who ascends the mountain of Yahweh. It's Yahweh's presence. So that which is given from Yahweh, you do according to that. But now our high priest has obtained a more excellent service. He's a mediator of a better covenant with better promises. Because the first covenant was faultless, not in the covenant, but the people, because he found faulty. So it wasn't fault, it was faulty, yes. It wasn't faultless, it was faulty, because he found fault not with the actual covenant of relationship and requirements, but with man and the people that don't keep covenant. You know? And the days are coming, well, I'll conclude and finish with the house of Yehuda and Israel a renewed covenant. His covenant isn't with anybody other than that which he delivered from Mitzrayim and the promise that he gave to Abraham and established with Yitzchak and gave as a law to Yaakov. And he says, because they didn't continue in my covenant, I disregarded them. Yahweh is the same yesterday and today and forever. If you don't continue in his covenant, and that continue is obediently obeying his covenant. If you don't continue obeying his covenant, he disregards you. That's it. We read from Shlomo, if you guard my laws, I won't forsake you. We read from Melaख़im about Shlomo. Yeah. And he's going to put our laws, or his laws, in our hearts and in our minds. And he says he'll remember our lawlessness and our sins no longer. And by saying renewed, he's made the first old. Now what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing. To explain that verse, what I believe Shaul was writing this letter, he was telling people, listen, now we understand in the blood of Messiah there's a new order. It's the order of Melchizedek. That's what this book's about. So therefore the service that's still going on, guys, at the temple, it's old. It's not the renewed one, because the renewed one is in the blood of Messiah. It's not in the blood of bulls and goats. And that old one is aged, and it's near disappearing, which in other words, it's going to be gone one of these days because it was still operational. And so we even see the Yehudim's attempt today of trying, the other day they slaughtered a red heifer apparently, but it wasn't completely spotless. So they're practicing apparently. Okay? It was not, there was a couple of weeks ago or something, they actually slaughtered as a practice a red heifer because they're trying to get the service of the old back again. And that is a covenant that's not based on better promises, because once again, there's fault with man and its service in that pattern that's not exactly as Moshe instructed. But in Messiah, that pattern is made complete because it's straight from above. And therefore we understand that we are the heavenly Yerushalayim, that which comes from above, being built up in the Master, having access by his blood into the heaven for our favor that we need, his favor that we need on our lives as we seek it. And therefore, when we look at this, we realize, when we understand what we've been given in the Master, that to have hearts that are moved, to be the voluntary offerings of our lives, and to be a contributing part to the body, should be something that's a spontaneous response to his love for us. It shouldn't be something that you shouldn't have to wait, in a sense, to, unless you don't know what you don't know. But in walking in this walk, hearts should be moved to just desire, to just want to be the dwelling place, the lovely dwelling place of our Master, and do whatever that takes in obedience. When I say do whatever it takes, I don't mean what way man would do it, but it really is according to this pattern. We have a high priest that we don't want to be outside of. We have a high priest that we don't want to be found to be without because we disregarded covenant. So we have a high priest that's given us sure promises. He's done his part. Now it's time for us to do our part and be part of the teruma, the contribution, as each part does its work. Amen? Any thoughts on today's readings? Anything stand out for you? Those that are online, I know we are always a few second delay. If you'd like to share something before we close for today, you're welcome to do so. I'll play a little video clip while you...
I call upon you therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. For I say, through the favor which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as Elohim has given to each a measure of belief. For as we have many members in one body, but all members do not have the same function, so we, the many, are one body in Messiah, and members, each one of one another. Now having different gifts, according to the favor which was given to us, let us use them accordingly. If prophecy, according to the proportion of belief. If serving, in the serving. Or he who is teaching, in the teaching. Or he who encourages, in the encouragement. Or he who is sharing, in sincerity. He who is leading, in diligence. He who shows compassion, joyously.
Okay, so I see there's no comments, questions, encouragements coming through. So on that note, we leave with you the idea or the concept of teruma with today's Torah portion, contribution, and we continue to pray that the whole body of Messiah has people that hearts are moved to serve him completely, love him with all their heart. And let's see his body flourish rather than being in a panic state because of the Donnell that's sown by an evil one. So, the evil one, yes, that evil one. Okay. Always good to be together. We'll see everybody next week as we continue our journey through Shemot. And we pray everyone will have a great week ahead. And as the new moon starts at sunset tonight, blow the shofar in the new moon. And continue to keep your eyes fixed on our Master, and love and blessings from our house to your house. Shalom, shalom. Carol is saying something there very powerful. The pattern of drawing near to Yahweh has never changed. As Yahweh does not change, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Praise Yahweh for his powerful order. Yigdal Yahweh. Amen. Pray. Yes, I'm going to pray. Okay, let's pray on that note. Master Yahweh, we thank you that we can sit in your presence, and it is a joy and a delight for us. We truly find great joy in being in your presence, and we thank you that you continue to show us wonders from your truth. Even if we hear it over and over and over, it's good, because we need to be reminded of the clarity and the perfection of your truth amidst a chaotic world that's constantly trying to close our ears and our eyes with troublesome things that try and distract us and cause us to be fruitless. But we thank you that we can cling to you, stay in you, and have the promise that as long as we are guarding your covenant, you guard us. And we bless you and praise you and thank you for giving us all that we need to bear fruit that lasts. And I pray for your shalom, your favor, your compassion, your comfort, your everlasting loving commitment to be upon every household that you have called to be together, walking in the unity of your Spirit, to proclaim your praises to the esteem of your name. And may we come together next Shabbat according to your perfect design and pattern, to the esteem and praise of you and you alone, in the name of Yahushua our Messiah. Amen and amen.